Hey everyone, how's it going? I'm coming to you with yet another guitar review, and this time we're looking at a Sigma. Now this is a more modern Sigma made by AMI, so it is not a Sigma by Martin. Alright, and before I get too far into this video, I want to quickly say that this is not going to be a shut up and play kind of video. It is going to be a full-length review with far more talking about the instrument than playing the instrument. I'll of course demonstrate how it sounds at various points in the video, but remember, this is going on YouTube under heavy compression after being recorded on a Samsung Galaxy microphone sitting some distance away from it. You're not going to get a true representation of how the guitar really sounds from this video. What you are going to get is the honest thoughts and opinions of someone who has owned this guitar ever since he first bought it over 10 years ago. Okay? This was a guitar that I have a lot of stories to tell with this guitar, really, that many of you can probably relate to, even if you've never owned this guitar, just because of what it is to me. All right, I bought this guitar back in 2012, I believe it was, and actually it was the serial number matched the year, so I can remember this. Yes, 2012, and it was my very first acoustic electric guitar. Okay, I learned how to play guitar on a Squier Bullet Stratocaster, and quickly learned that I was more of an acoustic guy. Went to my local guitar store, which is sadly now closed. We have a new one though, and bought an Airline model N1, I believe it was, archtop, and with a big old baseball bat neck, and I loved that guitar, and I learned a lot of my acoustic stuff on that guitar. And sorry, this isn't my first acoustic electric, but it's my first gigging guitar. Because after that, I went over to a Kona K1 ETRD, which was an all-laminate NATO acoustic electric. And, you know, it just wasn't, no matter how much I worked on setting it up, I couldn't get it to play the way that I really wanted to. And so that led me to importing this from Canada, because at the time you couldn't buy Sigma or AMI guitars in the States. And you still can't buy Sigma branded guitars, kind of, in the States. I'll touch on that a little bit later. But you can buy the AMI counterparts here. So, you know, this is a Sigma DMC-15E, but if you're in the United States, you can't buy the Sigma version, but you can buy the AMI DMC-15E, which is the exact same guitar with a different logo, silk screen on the headstock, or decal on the headstock. Anyways, this was my first true gigging guitar. I spent about $550 plus shipping to get one of these from Canada, and I loved it. I fell in love with it immediately. I mean, the playability out of the box was just so incredible to me. And the sound completely eclipsed my Kona or my Airline. You know, the solid mahogany top, and I'll get into the specs here in a little bit, really just resonated a lot more than what I was used to. And I used this as my primary gigging guitar for about the last decade now. With a caveat, and I'll get to that. But it has stories to tell. I mean, it's had its bridge pins changed. It's had strap buttons drilled in place in different locations when I was still trying to figure out, you know, the best place to put everything. It's got, you know, scars. Maybe you can see some of the it's kind of hard to catch in the light, but maybe you can see some of that on the side there, where it's just been, you know, played heavily. It's been knocked off of a guitar stand and damaged and just poorly glued back into place by a younger version of me who didn't know any better. I mean, this guitar was my first serious guitar. And I held on to it for many years until my ex-wife and I were moving into our first place together. And I needed money for, for bills, specifically the cost to turn electricity on and gas on and water on and, you know, first payment on the rent. And I had to sell nearly every one of my guitars, including this one. And it was out of my possession for about 2 or 3 years there, until I somehow ran across it again later in another guitar store just the next town over. And I saw it, I was like, yes, immediately bought it back because I hated letting go of it. So had a wild ride with this guitar. I've written many songs on this guitar over the years. I've played, I don't even know how many gigs on this guitar over the years. And so, very sentimental guitar to me. However, I will still be trying to bring to you guys a fully unbiased and honest review about this guitar, because obviously now I have much more experience with other instruments than I did back then. Is it still a great guitar? Yes, it is. Genuinely, it is. Is it the best guitar I've ever played? No. So, let's get into the specs. The top is solid mahogany. The back and sides are laminate mahogany. Okay? Which I do still love the grain on there. We have a mahogany neck. On this one, we have a rosewood fingerboard and bridge, because this is an older model. The newer versions are using micarta, so the same kind of material Martin uses on their X series guitars, fingerboard and bridges. I replaced the plastic bridge pins here with ebony bridge pins with an abalone inlay. The nut and saddle on this are bone. Okay, it is a 1 inch 11/16 nut. Scale length is 25.4 inches, and we have Grover Rotomatic tuning machines on here, which hold tune really, really well, as you would expect Grovers to do. The electronics in here, as you can see, maybe you can see that, it is the Isys Plus, aka the Preamp 2, I believe. Actually, I wrote it down. I have all my tech specs written down. Yeah, Isys Plus, later rebranded Preamp 2. Preamp pickup system with the Sonicore Undersaddle Piezo. I've played this thing so many times over the last, over 10 years, that I've actually started wearing the electronics out. I have to crank the volume all the way up to max to get this thing to actually sound full on stage now, because I've just weakened the electronics from so much use. I kind of need to get a new preamp put into it. But I will say, plugged in, it does have a very nice sound. I have a pure electronics demonstration that I'll link in the description down below, as well as all the tech specs will be linked down in the description down below. But yeah, plugged in, it has a good sound to it. Acoustically, I love the way it sounds. We have on the fingerboard, what do they call this kind of inlay? Diamond and square inlay, and it is mother of pearl, which looks really, really nice. And then you can see this is an older Sigma with the old Sigma logo. They've changed over to a different logo design now. Now, the elephant in the room, yes, this is a Martin copy. Okay, specifically it's a copy of a Martin DC-15ME, pretty much down to every last detail. Just except the sides and back are laminate as opposed to solid, and it doesn't have the open gear Grovers, it has the Rotomatic Grovers. So, otherwise, you can consider this a poor man's Martin D15, which is basically what it is. Now, Sigma used to be a brand owned by Martin, and to anyone outside the USA, you're familiar with the current Sigmas by AMI. To those within the USA, we get a different kind of Sigma guitar sold over here, typically. And it creates a lot of confusion, because if you see a Sigma guitar that doesn't have this logo or the AMI style logo, but just says Sigma and have a generic font, what you have is a Sigma guitar made by the St. Louis Music Corporation, which is the company who runs Alvarez. Okay, it's functionally just an Alvarez branded a Sigma. They are good guitars. They are, because Alvarez are good guitars. But they are not like these. These are modeled after Martin guitars. Okay, down to the bracing pattern, they are copies of Martins. The Sigmas by St. Louis Music Corporation, they could be copying a specific Martin. I couldn't tell you, but they don't appear to be one-to-one replicas like these are trying to be. Sorry about that. So keep that in mind if you're in the United States and you've seen Sigma guitars in your local guitar store and they have just the generic font. It is not the same brand as what we're looking at here today. Okay, these are made by AMI Music, or they're made by Cort, is who they're actually made by. They're made by Cort in Cort's Chinese factory, and then they're designed by quote-unquote AMI Music. AMI is the parent company of the brand, and then AMI brands them either Sigma or AMI, and then sells them into various markets. So, yes, these are Cort-made guitars. Okay, I was able to confirm that after much research. So you know you're getting a quality guitar for the money, because Cort does really good work on these budget instruments. They really do. Let's see here, if I left anything out looking over at my specs. Does not look like it. Yeah, made in China. Already mentioned that. Price on these is between $450 and $600 US typically. Okay, so between $450 and $600, and honestly, even all the way up to $600, I do think this thing is worth it. I currently have this strung with the Dario XS custom lights, which are 1152 coated phosphor bronze strings. And I love the way this thing plays, feels, and sounds. The neck is very comfortable. The frets, even out of the box, were dressed beautifully. There was no sprout whatsoever. The action is just as loaded as it was out of the box. You know, the only thing I've ever adjusted on this guitar was adjusting the truss rod as it's been exposed to different weather to keep the neck nice and straight. But the action on this thing is still beautiful, and it was beautiful out of the box. It didn't come with a second strap button. I had to install one, and when I was young, I tried installing one there, and then quickly learned why you don't do that, because it doesn't hang very well, and then installed it in the right place over there. Okay, the other strap button down here, plastic, and then the output jack with the 9-volt battery compartment. No XLR output on this one. Pickguard is that kind of tortoiseshell thing that you've all been used to over the years. And I'll go ahead and I'll give you some sound demonstrations of this guitar, but keep in mind that you're not really going to hear how it truly sounds through a phone microphone and YouTube compression, and also it has been modified with those new bridge pins, which is going to affect tone. So I'm going to sit closer to the camera so I can try to get this as close as I humanly can to the right sound. Okay. I screwed that up, but you know, I don't claim to be the best guitar player in the world. Let's see here. So I'm hoping the sound is coming across through nicely on the microphone. It probably isn't. Okay, it has a wonderful sound to it. In terms of sound quality, it competes very favorably against guitars that cost a fair bit more, in my opinion. Especially the closer you get to that $450 price range. Like, it's incredible how good this thing sounds to me for the money you're spending on it. And whether or not it comes through YouTube, well or not, I can't know until I review the video afterwards. But the neck just feels wonderful. I have I love the guitar. I do. Now, I mentioned that I don't think it's the best guitar in the world, because it's obviously not. I mean, I've played much more expensive Gibsons, Martins, Guilds, Japanese Yamahas, high-end Ovations. I played some beautiful guitars, and I own a couple guitars that I think probably do sound better than this. Okay, but does that mean this sounds bad? No. And those guitars that I own that sound better cost more money. They do cost more. Like, it's hard to beat this for the money. It really is. The way it feels to me, the way it sounds to me is wonderful. I like having the cutaway. Even though I've been moving away from cutaway guitars more and more recently, it is nice to have them on a lot of my gigging instruments, because if I do ever need to get up here, even though I'm not a lead player, I have the option to, So yeah, great poor man's Martin DC-15ME for sure. And they do make this in a triple O body. It's just called the triple O, because it's like, this is the DMC-15E. That would be like the triple O MC-15E, I believe. So if you're more of a triple aught fan, you can get it in a smaller body size. For me, I like having it in this larger body size. They also make it in a full acoustic version with no cutaway if you prefer that. If you don't want the cutaway and or the electronics. Now, if you live anywhere overseas, anywhere that's not the United States of America, you have access to another brand by Sigma/AMI called Ditson. And I wrote the model number down here. You can get an even cheaper version of this exact same guitar that just doesn't have Grover tuners, and it has all laminate construction, so not a solid mahogany top, but a laminate mahogany top, for a couple $100 less. And that is called, let's see, what did I write down here? The Ditson DC-15E. Okay, so Ditson DC-15E is an all laminate construction, cheaper version of the guitar. So you also have that to look for. I like to occasionally mention competition on the market, and again, I wrote it down here. There is competition for an all mahogany Dreadnought, at this price range. You've got the much more affordable Fender CD60 SCE in mahogany, which I'm going to tell you right now is a good guitar for the money. Doesn't sound or play as good as this. You've got the Ibanez AW54 CEOPN, which I've heard wonderful things about, and I would love to get one for review purposes at some point. And I plan to eventually purchase one. The Yamaha FG850. And then there's tons of all mahogany dreads on the market, really. But you can't go wrong with this one. It's a beautiful guitar. It's very minimalist. We don't have some kind of crazy finish on the top here. We see that beautiful mahogany wood grain. There's not really any binding on this thing. It is very much a straight-to-the-point, minimalist working man's guitar. And that's how I've used it, and it's worked wonderfully for me in that role. And I've had other musicians at gigs ask to play the guitar, and then, like, before their set, if we were doing like an open mic thing, or if I was opening for someone or they were opening for me, and I've had them ask, can I play your guitar? instead of mine. Yours plays so good, it feels so good, it sounds so good. Now, so yeah, go for it. Knock yourself out. Have fun with it. Because what good is music if you can't share it? So I love this guitar. It will always have a special place in my heart. It'll never leave my collection again. But even ignoring all the sentimentality behind it, it's just a fantastic axe. It really is. For the money, it's very hard to go wrong with any of these AMI/Sigmas. But this one in particular, it might be just the best playing and sounding one that I've personally held yet. So I hope you all enjoyed the review. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day, and I will see you next time.